And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Traveling up. Roger and roll, Atlantis.
Water towers, fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Fighting downside FD off. Bring in FD off. It's orange!
R45! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
What is it?
Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
There's methane to be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You good? We don't need any more of these.
All right, y'all. You can see by the progress bar view on the screen that we are waiting for something to happen out at SLC 41 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station this morning. My name is John Galloway with NSF. There's a little bit different view. You can see we've got a shiny new rocket there in the vertical integration facility for United Launch Alliance. It's a Vulcan rocket. It's actually the second Vulcan rocket that is getting ready to roll out in advance of its CERT-2 mission. The second flight of Vulcan that's going to be expected here. Should expect, I guess, to see it start rolling out of the vertical integration facility shortly. But we've got a couple different cameras over there, and we've got a couple different friends to talk about what's happening this morning out there at the Cape. Oh, that's actually the net clock. I was like, is the clock right? Why does it say negative 92 hours? Well, it says negative 92 hours because we're coming up within a couple days of the launch of CERT-2. It's not just going to be me talking. You know how it goes. Sawyer, do I have you in comms with me this morning?
You do indeed. Good morning, Das. Good morning, chat. It is a beautiful day for a rocket to roll.
For a rocket to roll. Nice. Sawyer's going to be here helping answer some questions and stuff like that as we get going. Also, we've got our folks out in the field today. They're pretty busy, so let's see if they can check in real quick. If not, they may be setting up cameras and stuff like that. D, do we have you on comms right now?
You sure do. How do you hear me?
Hey, we hear you just fine. How's it out there this morning?
It is a beautiful morning. It is already getting nice and warm, but we have a great view of Vulcan here about to make its way to the pad. So I just can't wait to see this rocket roll by for its second ever launch.
Excellent. How many cameras you got out there today? Can I ask that?
I only have one actively streaming that I'll be pretty hands-on with. I have some others in my car, but they are not set up at the moment.
Okay, all right. Well, if you need time to run and grab more cameras, didn't mean to put you on the spot there, but also out we have Max. I think we checked in with Max a bit ago. Max, we got you on?
I sure hope so. How do you have me?
Hey, we hear you fine. Should I ask you how many? Now I feel like I've made it a contest.
Well, I mean, I have the one camera that I'm currently streaming with right now, and then of course I have my camera that I'm going to be running around and shooting some photos with as well. So at least two. I think I have one or two more in the car. May or may not break them out, depending on what uses I might find for them. But currently just the two. But I am stoked to be sharing this view with everybody else because we are going to be no more than probably 30 or 35 feet away from Vulcan as it rolls by at its closest. So it's going to be one heck of a view.
Outstanding. You can see the road right there. There's actually a set of train tracks in that road, and the transporter, the part that says ULA on it there, will roll out with the rocket on these massive, like, custom-built train cars to transport the rocket from where it's put together out to where it launches from. So I guess a more relevant question is, has United Launch Alliance handed out your hearing protection this morning?
Not quite yet. I presume they will soon, but you know what? D has headphones and I have my AirPods, so I think that might offer enough of acoustic shielding, I guess, to qualify for Ear Pro. Maybe. Nice. I could be wrong. I don't know.
When the rocket rolls past, they let the camera folks be so close to the rocket that they actually, when I've been out there for rolls like this, hand out hearing protection because some of the equipment is pretty loud as it rolls by. But we are standing by for that. Don't forget, we're not just like letting the magic stream fairies make the stream happen today. Kevin Michael Reed is in the background, pressing all the buttons and pulling the switches. Thank you so much, Kevin, for getting up early and getting everything ready for the stream. So that's going to be our plan here. We are going to be bringing some questions out. If you got questions, tag us in chat at NASASpaceflight. Let us know what questions you have about the missions. And from there, I guess we should get started, shouldn't we, Sawyer?
Why not?
Good question. Why not? Tell us a little bit about CERT-2. Like, we've been waiting for the second flight of Vulcan here for a little bit. Last one was out in January. Like, what, January 8th, I think? Super early January this year, right?
Yep. It was definitely earlier this year in January when we saw the first ever flight, and now we are getting ready for the second flight. This one is called CERT-2, which is the second certification launch to the United States Space Force. Once all that certification is complete, they will then be able to carry national security payloads starting either later this year or early next year. This mission is actually going into a solar orbit. Basically, the whole point of this is to demonstrate that it can send something on an Earth escape trajectory. And so that will hopefully be taking an inert payload, meaning it will not be jettisoned, along with a couple of experiments and other small things on it, out of Earth's sphere of influence and into the sun's.
Are they like launching this to Mars or anything like that, or?
Not literally just around the sun for all eternity.
I like that they're honest about it. They're just launching it out around the sun for all of eternity.
Yeah, until
into
the
a
death of the universe.
heliocentric orbit, right?
Exactly, yes.
Literally just means that the center of the orbit is the sun versus it orbiting another planet, like orbiting the Earth, orbiting the moon, whatever. It's a heliocentric orbit. We've got this. This is the Flight 2 animation. I think they released like a teaser of what to expect during the flight.
Yep.
And the video here that ULA released is talking about how big the rocket is. Look, it's got 2 SRBs. The SRBs jettison somewhere between 100 and 150 seconds, depending on mission requirements. Very dark down there behind it. And I expect the plume should be expanding a little bit more here, ULA.
Yeah,
but
they showed a night launch for it, even though the launch window is 6 to 9 a.m.
it is, hey, whatever. Pretty soon here, they're going to show us that the BE-4 engines, the twin BE-4 engines, the video refers to, will shut down at BECO. Can y'all tell I watched this video right before the stream started?
I was going to say, did you have a script or something there?
Well, their script. Got the Centaurs there. The Centaurs light up with the pencil-thin flames, lacking some plume expansion we hope to see when the real thing happens. Talking about the payload fairing, and there's a sandwich composite, etc., etc. Hey, if you want all the actual commentary on the video, you can watch it on ULA's channel. But there you have it. MECO, whatever number was next to the MECO there. They just keep lighting and unlighting the engines, tossing the payload into a heliocentric orbit on its way out of the Earth system, not the solar system, but the Earth system. They have like a satellite pictured on board, but do we even know, Sawyer, what the payload looks like? Is it like a concrete wheel of cheese, or?
They haven't actually said officially. All of their documentation so far just says an inert payload and experiments and demonstrations associated with future Centaur 5 technologies. In other words, basically probably a block of concrete with some solar panels, it looked like.
See, I'd love to see it, though. Like, I'd love to see, hey, here's this huge block of concrete we put on board. I wonder if it's comically small inside the fairing.
A la Wheel of Cheese style with the first flights of Dragon.
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you just put a block of steel or a block of concrete in there, steel or concrete are... I guess concrete usually isn't a material you use to build satellites from, right? So it tends to be way more dense than a satellite. So you have all of this volume in the 5.4 meter fairing up on top of Vulcan there for satellites that are usually not made of concrete and rebar or whatever it would be made of. And so when you densify the payload down to, we really just need the mass, you likely end up with a comically small payload down in the bottom of the thing. We've seen some missions like that, though, lately.
Yes, we have. It's a little weird to see, but again, at this point, the main thing is to prove to the United States Space Force, hey, here's what our new rocket can do. Please give us payloads. Okay, thanks.
Please give us payloads. And that, of course, is why it's called CERT-2. They're launching this mission to prove that the rocket does what it says on the tin. Of course, the first flight of Vulcan went off without a hitch, launch-wise. They launched the lander that was going out to the moon, the Peregrine lander, and the lander did not do so well. A couple of remove before flight things needed to be removed, I don't know, before flight on the payload, but Vulcan itself, the BE-4 engines, their first time out, a flawless launch for the Peregrine lander on its way to the moon. Of course, Peregrine did not, well, I guess technically it made it to the moon, it just didn't live once it got to the moon, but that's beside the point. Vulcan coming out of the gate strong. Hopefully we get a hopefully it comes out of the gate at all here this morning as we stand by for force motion. You see what I did there, Sawyer?
That was good. Very good.
I tried. So this is a good point from chat. John Ferris says they wouldn't want it too dense in case it makes it back through the atmosphere. I think that is an excellent thing to point out, but I'd almost have to ask ULA how that's mitigated. Like, in the event that there's some sort of failure on Vulcan, are there any mitigations that, I guess, decrease the survivability, or what's the demisability was the word I learned the other day, of the payload? I wonder if there's not something with this inert mass that causes it to break up in case it needs to re-enter.
I would imagine it would. It's probably not made of like Inconel or something, but as someone pointed out in chat, it's I would imagine something that does break up easily in the event it needs to. But otherwise, we'll be able to withstand just being out in space.
Cheese is pretty demisable. Red Mox says in chat that cheese is pretty demisable. Oh, I really do think that that's a great question. And I wonder if we can't reach out to ULA and ask that question to see if we can't get an answer on that. Not really something we'd expect to get during the roll, but potentially maybe one of our folks out there could tag somebody or just tap somebody on the shoulder real quick and be like, hey, what is the inert payload? Are we just supposed to call it an inert payload? Is it concrete? Is it something that breaks apart? That is a really interesting question. I don't know that we'll be able to get the answer to this morning. We're just going to keep on going down the line here. Let me check some chat real quick. Dennis Barrett is excited for Vulcan. Can't wait to see a Dream Chaser launch. Of course, that was what was supposed to launch on this second flight of Vulcan, isn't it, Sawyer?
It is, yes. This was originally going to be the CRS SNC-1, which was the first part of Arianespace's attempt at joining the Commercial Resupply Services program with their cargo version of Dream Chaser. It was actually, the rocket was ready and the payload was not, and ULA wanted to get this certification done as soon as possible, so they made the agreement to move that to no earlier than 2025 for Dream Chaser's first flight, and to get this one off the ground sooner.
Makes sense. Of course, multiple things have to go into getting the rocket ready for flight, and the payload being ready, I guess, is maybe one of the critical path issues, to put it quite clearly. So if the payload's not ready and you still want to get that certification done so that you can be in booking out and scheduling all of your other missions, it might make sense to just launch an inert payload to prove the rocket's ready to go. You don't have to launch anything super fancy like, oh, everything has to carry a useful payload. That's not how it works. Here, when we come up to the launch window, it is all about showing that the rocket and systems are ready to go to launch whatever anybody wants to throw at it, not to put any specific payload into orbit. So we are still standing by, waiting for first motion here. Chat, y'all are going to need to squint at that little line between the left side of the HIF door and the fairing and tell me if it starts to get bigger. As I read through chat and stuff like that, I can't always watch it very clearly, but if y'all see it start to move, spam it in chat, because that's what I'm watching right now. Let's see here. An inert payload like a spy satellite, and then Simon saying, what good could a spy satellite do in a heliocentric orbit? That's what they want you to think. Maybe there's something in that heliocentric orbit that's like the best place for a spy satellite. They'd never see it coming. Clearly not the best place for a spy satellite in a heliocentric
probably
orbit.
not.
Yeah, it's a little too far away to be too terribly useful. Phillips, the payload is just to prove that the booster works. You got it. And Centaur, the second stage as well. Who is this? Retro Clinic says, for an inert payload, they should just use a scale model of the USS Enterprise or a Star Destroyer. I'm not sure what I think about a Star Destroyer in a heliocentric orbit being picked up on anybody's scanners.
Oh gosh.
Can you imagine?
I can actually, and it's a little funny actually.
They're like, no, that's just the inert payload we launched.
Oh
Why is
yeah,
it?
totally. Don't worry
Yeah.
about it.
It doesn't seem so inert. It's scanning us, sir. Like, anyways, it's still not moving. Thank you for the update there, chat. Does everyone know what makes a payload inert? I'm not sure if that's a joke. I don't see a pun in that. Do you, Sawyer?
I'm trying to come up with one even. I don't have one.
Be like the pun consultation here. I mean, it just means that it's not supposed to actively do anything, right? The payload itself isn't a satellite. Inert usually means it doesn't have comms, it doesn't have fuel, it doesn't have electricity, it doesn't need to generate power, etc. The Centaur would be completely different. So the Centaur doesn't necessarily, well, the Centaur can't be inert or else it's not getting on its heliocentric orbit, right? But the actual extra mass that they're adding doesn't need to do anything other than be mass. Right.
In fact, there's not even a jettison planned during this, so it's not like they're going to deploy this inert payload. It is meant to stay attached to the Centaur upper stage for the entire flight.
Ah, that's a good point. So there's not even going to be like a separation event where then the block of concrete, inert cheese, whatever it's supposed to be, flies freely from the Centaur. It's going to stay connected to the Centaur through its entire life, I guess. Even after Centaur is no longer doing anything and it's out there floating around the sun, it's all just going to be one piece, one orbit.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Why not launch something useful like a Project Kuiper satellite? Well,
Kuiper.
I don't think Kuiper. Thank you. I don't think heliocentric orbit is the intended destination for that constellation, is it?
No, it's not. And part of this is also to prove that they can do these launches that require higher velocity to them. So obviously, you're not going to want to launch a Space Force payload typically around the sun, but if you want it in a direct to geostationary orbit launch, let's say, or a slightly farther out distance, whatever that may be, you want to prove that it has that extra oomph to it, basically, that it can go beyond just low Earth orbit for any other payloads that we may or may not know about.
Yep. Here is a good question from Bart. And Bart's asking, how can a VC2 configuration, so the configuration with 2 SRBs, certify all configurations, including the much heavier VC6 that has 6 SRBs? What do you think about that?
My thought, honestly, on that is it's more of a proof of the concept of the entire system to prove, hey, we've done a lower orbit one, we've now going for a higher orbit one, and that's basically it. It's the point that it can go to these variable orbits, no matter the mass of the payload. And the SRBs, I think it's more of just proving that they work to begin with in this case. And as long as they light and separate, that's what they care about.
I think, you could argue that there's some load force testing, right? Where if you have a heavier payload on top and then necessarily 6 SRBs on the bottom instead of just 2 SRBs, how are you proving that the structural and dynamics of the rocket can survive launch, right? That's a lot of stuff that you can test on the ground, on the stand, like structural loading and that sort of stuff. There are ways to actually prove that out on the ground, whereas the test here is more about control and dynamics. So can you continue to control the Centaur? Do you have the ability to relight it for the proper number of burns? Can it coast for the number of times, or the amount of time, not number, the amount of time that it needs to coast? all sorts of other things to the mission profile that you need to do, as opposed to, well, can the structure handle more force between the SRBs and the payload? That's a little bit easier to proof out on the ground than, well, can we relight Centaur in vacuum X number of times with X number of duration between it? That's a little bit different, I think. So I think it's a fair thing to observe, but that is why they fly it, and potentially that's why they're flying an inert payload here, just to make sense, or just to make sure that everything is doing what it is intended to do, right?
Right, and this one has a Miko is 15 minutes and 55 seconds into flight, so a long first burn for the second stage, and then 15-minute coast, and then a 4-minute burn after that relight.
After the relight. Good deal. Folks, if you're just joining us, it says CERT-2 in the upper left-hand corner. That is for the actual launch, but it's no earlier than 92 hours from now. The window is coming up on Friday, October 4th. It's a morning launch out there at the Cape, but today is Monday, and we don't expect this to be launching until Friday. So if you're looking at this, you can see the rocket doesn't seem to have exited the barn yet. It's going to be on the right-hand side there, that tall vertical building. And it's going to be making its way over to the launch pad on the left. There you can see I'm checking the gap between the payload fairing and the door. It looks like it hasn't moved yet, huh?
No, little A/B testing on it. Trying to see. I don't think so.
Little A/B testing, nice. This is... It's so hard to see live sometimes, like when we watch... Oh! Wait, did the gap just get bigger? Or do I just want to see the gap getting bigger?
No, I think you might be right.
I don't know. Weigh in, chat. If you're watching, hop back and forth. It's so tough to see when you're watching the real-time feed. And then you go back and you time-lapse and you're like, oh, geez, it raised up. And we didn't see it raise up because it's so subtle when you see it live. I don't know that it's raised up or not yet. I know that that's one of the steps in preparing to move it out. But when you go back and you time-lapse it, you put it at 50x, 100x speed, you're like, wow, it actually raised up significantly. Then it scooted forward a little bit, but we didn't see it live. Not actually moving, no movement yet, don't see a difference. AB equals 0. Okay, good. Thanks, y'all. Thanks for the help.
Josh, I have an update.
Hey, what's up?
So ULA has handed out their hearing protection now, so we must be getting close.
We must be getting close because the hearing protection is being handed out. Nice. What's the current volume level? Still nice and Cape ambient?
Very, very ambient E with a hum coming over from the VIF, but that will change as the locomotives and the mobile launch platform get ever so closer.
Gotcha. Folks, we got a little bit of a robot from Max there. Y'all heard what he said. It's Cape ambient right now, but as the rocket and transporter gets closer, it'll get much louder. We were joking earlier about handing out the hearing protection. Not really a joke, because it does get loud as the machinery starts to go by, but we are diverting all of our available bandwidth to the video feeds and the audio that Max and D are sending us. Every now and then it hiccups, but that's fine because they're out there in the field sending us these feeds. NASASpaceflight used the Commodore 64 supercomputer to confirm a slight raise. What sort of raise are we talking about here? Oh, I'm going to keep grabbing some questions from chat. Can it wiggle a bit inside the high bay? Wiggle, Sawyer.
It did look like it was doing a little left-right wiggle there, but I guess that would be normal at this point because they haven't said otherwise. So potentially.
I mean, I know that they raise it up to get a little bit of clearance when they start to move it. They bring it off sort of the ground pins or whatever you want to call it, the piers that it rests on while they're working on it. So you do see it gain that clearance. I don't know that I've seen it here. It's almost impossible to see live. When it goes up, should it wiggle back and forth? I don't believe you should see much of a wiggle because the way that they actually raise it up, the hydraulic platforms keep it very level as they move it. Like the carrier, the train cars actually have these hydraulics on it that help move it a little bit. But I don't think that you would see the whole stack like waggle back and forth dramatically. I don't know if that's what you were going for wiggle there, but
Yeah, oh, it's not anything huge. It will
yeah,
be
yeah.
minute. You may see it, a little bit, but it shouldn't be anything massive. And in fact, that's part of the safety of it typically, is that something like this, where it is on a mobile transporter, you might see it rock a little bit because it's meant to basically withstand the winds of Florida too.
Yeah. Huh. We will see, though. And of course, we'll have a time lapse of this as well. We'll come back afterwards, and you'll see it over on our socials if you follow us on X or wherever. We're on Facebook. We're everywhere. We're trying to reach as many different people as we can, but we'll get some time lapses out where things like that will be more apparent. Here is a fantastic question from Khaled. I hope I pronounced your name correctly there. What are the advantages or disadvantages of rolling out a rocket vertically over rolling out horizontally? And you can see on the screen different places to follow us on social when you want to catch those time lapses and stuff. So Sawyer, let's talk about that. This is a huge, tall building, right? They put the rocket together vertically in this building, and then when it moves to the launch pad, it stays vertical the entire time. Why? What's the point? Why build a big building? Why don't you just lean it over like they do the Deltas or like Falcons do, and then put the payload on and roll it out horizontally and then verticate it?
That's a good question. And
It is.
I actually talked to one of the engineers who designed a satellite that launched. It was originally launched on vertical rockets like this, where it's stacked. And the nice thing about that is your satellite stays in the exact same orientation the entire time. So it's upright, the mass is designed so that it's always upright and that it's balanced. Whereas something where it starts horizontal and then is raised vertical, obviously your gravity is going to be a little different when it's on its side. So they actually have to design the spacecraft slightly differently to be able to withstand being on its side for a bit until it is raised upright.
That makes good sense. So what Sawyer's talking about there is the structure of the satellite, the payload itself. Of course, here, this is an inert payload. This isn't a huge deal, but when you get into designing satellites, imagine a satellite that has to be bolted to the side of the rocket, right? Imagine the rocket is horizontal and you have to raise up your satellite and support it and bolt it to the side. And then when you're done bolting it to the rocket, it has to hang there sideways on the side of the rocket with gravity pulling it sideways, right? In order to design a satellite that can withstand that can be structurally sound when it's hanging literally on the side of the rocket, because the rocket's horizontal, right? You have to put more mass into it. You have to put more structure. You have to put more support so that your payload itself, your satellite, can be horizontally integrated to the rocket and then be raised vertical. So if you're transporting, imagine like the payload sort of bouncing on the end horizontally with the rocket not really supporting it, the rocket just sort of holding it up on the side as you transport it to the pad. And then contrast that with a vertical integration here, right? The rocket is currently in the orientation it's going to launch. So it's up and down right now. When it launches, it's going to be up and down. When it transports to the pad, it's going to be up and down. When it's got the force of the two SRBs and the two BE4s pushing on it and it's accelerating through the atmosphere, and the drag is pushing against the fairing and the engines are pushing against the drag, like when all of that's happening, all of the force is still going to be up and down. And so you can design your satellite to withstand the force, like the structure of the satellite, the main body or frame of the satellite can withstand those vertical forces, and they don't have to worry about withstanding horizontal forces. So therefore, you can make your satellite structure lighter. And when you can make your satellite structure lighter, you can have more mass that's there for other things, communication antennas, power generation, et cetera, or you can have more fuel on it so it can last longer, fuel for thrusters, fuel to get it into different orbits, to do station keeping, yada, yada, yada. So when you're able to vertically integrate it like this, you save mass on the satellite structure, and that gives you mass for fuel or payload or other useful things that aren't structure. Now, there are some negatives to doing it vertically here. So when you're working on this, you're way up off the ground. It's why they have the building. It's why they have all the different work platforms so they can work on it safely. But you are working at height when you're doing this. You also have to raise the payload all the way up to put it on top. So you're not just putting the payload like 20, 30 feet off the ground, whatever. You're raising the payload the entire size of the rocket, the entire height of the rocket to stack it on top. But the building's specifically designed for that. It's got a special area where they put the payload. There you go. There's the hey, that actually shows the inert payload as a little block on top of it. But there are some challenges to that. You also, when you're rolling it out, you have to keep it vertical. It's a little bit more difficult to keep the rocket vertical. You have winds that come through, all this sort of stuff. The special transporter needed to keep it vertical. You see the umbilicals are connected there as well, right? And so when you're transporting it out, the umbilicals have to be connected, and then they have the actual tower that moves with it. I guess we call it the tower, Sawyer. What's the official name for it?
Or what is it actually there?
The gray part that moves with the rocket. That says ULA on the side real big.
I believe it's just part of the mobile launcher. But
The mobile launcher.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go with mobile launcher for a minute now, but see all of the lines that have to be connected to the rocket. All those have to stay connected to maintain the environment, maintain power and telemetry and communications and all that stuff for the payload vertically. So you've literally got this sort of tower that travels along vertically with it. So anyways, it really is a good question. I mean, you can talk about all sorts of different things, but thank you so much for asking that, and giving us a chance to talk through it.
And the person I spoke to, again, it's not as big of a deal. They are just as easy to do either way. They each have their pros and cons. It's just you build your satellite slightly differently depending on that orientation. So, there are pros and cons.
Makes good sense. Chat saying VLP. Phillips Turtles in chat says VLP, the Vulcan launch platform. Have we officially renamed this, I guess?
I believe it is. Yeah, because then there's, I would imagine, the Atlas one.
All right. Hey, Colette, no problem. Colette said thanks a lot for the answer. I mean, that was quite a good discussion there. So let's see here. We're looking at the inert payload. It actually looks like it's a little bit of a cylinder with some flanges on it. I don't know if we should read too much into what that looks like, right?
I mean, it looks a lot like one of those science containers from Kerbal, but
it looks like the science experiment container.
It does, doesn't it? A little bit.
That's fantastic. All right. It sounds like reports live from the field, they're starting to hear sirens. So we might be go for roll, like clearance sirens, just to warn everybody that motion should start shortly.
Actually, it is moving.
Is the gap widening?
It looked like it started to widen. And back channel agreeing.
All right, folks. Here we go. We've got first motion.
10:01 a.m. Eastern.
Sawyer, are they going to take this back into the VIF and paint it with the cool paint job?
What? You don't think the paint job that they have on the first stage is cool?
I mean, right now it looks a little lacking.
In fact, the swoop that they have going on, I believe they said that after Flight 6, the plan is to no longer paint the swoop on it.
Oh, man.
Which right now, it is a good way, though, to delineate. It has different materials on it. You can see that part is... You can
see, yeah.
It's foam. The Sophie, for those who might remember it, that's the same stuff that they use on the shuttle external tank that we've seen on Delta 4. It's that spray-on foam insulation.
I really wonder if it's still called Sophie. I think it is still called Sophie. I don't know if that's it's not a brand name. It's not like Kleenex or Memorex. I don't think anybody even knows of what I mean when I say Memorex. But it's more of a generic term, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it's basically, it's what it is. It's spray-on foam insulation, whether it's brand name or not.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's like Kleenex is... I actually don't know what Kleenex means. I don't think Kleenex is an acronym. Like Sophie is an acronym, like you said.
Or Xerox or any of the... None of those are actually just good acronyms. They're just names.
See, my first thought was none of those are actually words, but I guess technically they are words. They're just not acronyms. See, I don't know if Xerox is an acronym or not.
I think so.
Let's set some expectations here. What we expect after the first motion, we expect it to sort of move out of the barn a little bit, but it's going to pause. This happens every single time. they need to do some final disconnects after it actually gets out of the building, check everything, make sure it's all good to go. So even though we see the gap widening just a bit, we still have a little bit of time before it really starts rolling up the road. Now remember, the rocket is going to go right past Max and D over here. In fact, I think we have a shot of exactly how, like a Max for scale sort of shot that shows exactly how far from the road the cameras in Max and D are. That has less road in it than I expected, but
More
it does.
Max, less road.
It has more Max, less road, but what it does have is a cool BE4 shirt on it. I feel like Max and D both needed to wear the BE4 shirt and then stand next to each other, so we had the twin BE4s like the rocket actually has.
Oh my gosh, that's genius.
We just need like two. We need like an emergency shirt to put on so they can stand next to each other. Maybe we'll do that for launch. Anyways, we released this new collection of shirts. If y'all have seen this, we've said it a couple times. The Thrust collection, BE4, because Vulcan is launching here, was one of the ones that we put in there. We've got RS-25. Of course, we've got Raptors and Merlins from the Thrust collection. But Max, understanding the assignment and wearing the proper apparel out for the rollout of the Vulcan CERT-2 today. I like how Max is sort of flexing as well. Like that's like the shirring. Is he flexing or is he showing off the shirt? Either way, it works out well.
It definitely emphasizes the shirt that's available at shop.nasaspaceflight.com.
Ah, here we go. Okay, here is the shot that Max is still wearing the shirt. You can see the camera is set. You can see our packs there, our broadcast packs. I want to go trim those bushes so we can see down the rocket a little bit more. But when it comes by, it's going to be right there. You can see sort of the keep out cones and where we've set up. But the rocket's going to go probably not 50 feet away from where they're standing. So Max would like everyone to know that he's not flexing. Apparently, if he was flexing, his muscles would be even bigger. I'm not sure. He's just pointing out that he was not flexing in that pose. It was not a flex.
I don't know why I felt the need to at least point that out. I just had to.
He just had to point that out. Anyways, you saw we got a little bit of motion there, but coming out of the VIF, the vertical integration facility, slow and steady. Still can't quite see it here. Like the rocket's not visually discernible from the building. If it is visible here, it's sort of blended in, but we're continuing to wait for the rollout.
Yep, still waiting for it to peek out.
I was trying for a peak pun there, but it's not going to peak until it actually launches. And even then,
come on. This
the
is the
heliocentric orbit
joke here.
Like every single thing you say, I'm like, how can we punify that?
Punify, I like that.
Yeah, you really can't set up in the middle of the road. They're in a different road, Rowan. They're on the side road. They're not in the main road. We're really peaking your entrance, a Neocon. Okay. It's
Good.
not peak season yet. All right. Shmal Nathan asks if the blinking light has enough blinker fluid.
Ooh, that's a good question. It might run out.
Well, see, the thing is, if you add too much blinker fluid to it, would it make it stop blinking? Or is the appropriate level of blinker fluid what makes the light actually blink?
It needs the blinker fluid. Absolutely, it needs the blinker fluid. Sorry, I had to hop in here. I'm an expert on the subject.
I figured that would summon you, D, from the road trip shenanigans of some of the member content, huh?
Well,
Hey, if you guys didn't realize, technically eye drops are blinker fluid, in case you were wondering.
Oh my gosh. Really?
Gosh, these puns, blinkingness.
You're welcome.
D, did you ever get good windshield wipers? Did you order replacement windshield wipers yet?
Yes, they were ordered. They have been installed. I was told I should have done a slow-mo compilation cinematic installation video of putting on the new windshield wipers. However, no, they have been installed. The only thing I need to do now is fill up my windshield wiper fluid, as that is running low.
Folks, there's some behind the scenes sort of inside jokes going on here. We do member content. Like if you're a member of the membership program, you've seen a couple gifted memberships and stuff like that pop through chat this morning. Every now and then we do members only streams, and we've done a couple road trip streams. Max and D road trip down to catch the Polaris Dawn re-entry all the way down at the Keys. So we did some live stream while they were driving. And we've got stuff coming out from New Mexico when Jack and D went to, it was New Mexico, wasn't it? Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
It was.
Yeah.
Yes. For Virgin Galactic.
Yes. So we do these behind the scenes sort of member streams. They're super low maintenance, like they're fun. It's like folks hanging out, so we don't put them publicly on the channel because it's a little bit, can I say, less serious coverage? Is that fair to say? I think it's probably fair to say.
I think less serious is a good description of what that was. Yes.
Adequate description. But if you are a member of the membership program, be on the lookout for those. They'll actually have a little special tag on YouTube, and it'll say, a little green star tag thing or whatever that says member content or members only. And every now and then you'll see those pop up, and they're literally just fun behind the scenes hangout with some of the team. But that's where blinker fluid and the windshield wiper comments and stuff like that come from those behind the scenes things. In fact, looks like 5 more people can enjoy the membership program. Dougal has gifted 5 memberships. So if you got one of those, informal, yes, the word is informal. If you got one of those gifted memberships like Dan B. and Dylan Rushman did, say thanks to Dougal over there. Appreciate you, Dougal. Thanks for spreading the love. So Kevin says it's kind of like the flame trench, but actually in the trench. Oh, we did a solar panel. That's right. We did a solar panel frame build with Dan out at Boca. We had like some behind the scenes live member hangout while we were building new C-channel frames for some of our solar equipment. Interesting.
Only the most exciting members content.
Bolting together literal pieces of steel.
It actually is really surprisingly fun and cool to watch those.
It's compelling content. 5 more gifted memberships from Matt Weaver. Matt, thanks a bunch for the support and for spreading the love and the members content around there. We appreciate you.
Has the bacon stream not been mentioned in all this? Did I miss it somehow?
We weren't going to speak of that. The time you microwaved bacon, is that what you're talking about?
It was for science, and that was one small part of the bacon that we had.
Right, then you made it inedibly spicy.
Exactly. Well, just inedibly microwaved, maybe was the right way to say it.
Well, that too.
That too. There was a question as to whether or not bacon could be an inert payload.
I mean,
ooh,
technically it can.
If you have enough of it, probably.
See, I just don't think that bacon would be considered inert, especially if it has the proper amount of grease. Like, I don't think the bacon grease would be considered an inert substance. So the fact
if it's an organic payload.
It's an organic. It's not an inert. It's an organic payload. I feel like... go ahead,
that would really make it free range. That's for sure.
Oh, jeez.
I shouldn't have even, should I?
Ay.
Oh,
Bacon
look, rocket launch video.
Yeah, we're just going to start showing some rocket launch footage here. And a bunch of bullseye graphs. And the pad. And the rocket ship. This is actually how the rockets make it to the Cape.
I saw someone asking earlier what highway they take. They actually take the waterways, not the highways.
I feel like there's something you could do with the recent rains and the rivers being slightly higher than, but not really for a rocket ship. It's got to fit under those bridges.
Yeah. Actually, most of the Cape team has now seen this booster up close. I was there as they unloaded it off a rocket ship. Then Julia and Dee got a special up-close look at it, and now Max and Dee there as it gets ready to roll by.
Nice. I like this in chat. Andrew Folk says, watching pieces of steel being bolted or welded together is the definition of Starbase Live. There
True.
there really is a market for that content, I guess, because people like watching things being bolted. Here's a payload fairing being bolted together and lifted. There you can actually see how it's vertically integrated, right? The payload fairing stays vertical, and the payload itself stays vertical, and they lift it up, and everything stays vertical, and it gets stacked on top of the rocket vertically. I feel like we're supposed to be talking about specifics as to what's happening with the mission here, as opposed to whether or not bacon grease is an inert payload.
I mean, potato bacon, you know.
Who's in charge here?
We
Not sure there's anybody.
need an adult.
I should tell you more about lifting the brown stick. Looks like we have a daily summary fan in chat over there. Did you see that daily summary where I was like, oh, they seem to be lifting a brown stick? Like I didn't know exactly what it was and I didn't want to guess. So I just
Yeah.
described it what it was. It was a brown stick.
Which, by the way, those update videos now have an available commentary track, in case you didn't know.
They do by default. Like if you watch one of the Starbase daily summaries, they'll have usually me running my mouth like stream of consciousness mode, experiencing the video for the first time, like most people that are watching it are. But I need to know, is this a playback that we're watching here?
It would have to be.
It's got to be. Okay.
Launched today.
I glanced up and I was like, wait a second, why are we watching this? Like, it's mission control. Certainly they're not on console right now while they roll out, but this is let's say this is a replay of the previous launch.
I think it's a summary of their different launches from Slick 41 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, where this is set to take place, because that is definitely not a... The other one was certainly not a flame of methane.
It wasn't a flame of methane. Nice. How we doing? As promised, we got a little bit of motion, and then it paused. That is expected. That's what we wanted to, or not what we wanted to see. I guess that's what we expected to see. But we continue to stand by for the rollout of Vulcan CERT-Flight 2, or CERT-2 it's actually called, not CERT-Flight 2. And we expect it to be rolling out here shortly, because we just saw it sort of scoot a little bit as they prepared for it to go.
Yep. And this one, they are not planning a static fire, but they are planning to do what's known as a wet dress rehearsal. And anyone who has watched our streams of these over at Starbase knows that's where they load it up with all the fuel, but don't actually fire it.
All right. It sounds like reports from the field, Max and D saying that they're seeing motion again. So let's squint down to 2010 and see if we can see the gap widening.
2010, I was in school still. I don't want to go back to that.
What's more concerning is that I can squint down to 2010. Like somehow squinting lets me time travel. There's a person for scale over there walking back and forth. Are they on the cell phone? Are they talking on comms or something?
I would think a walkie.
Yeah, like a walkie-talkie or something like that. You'll see ULA has spotters all around the building. They walk with it. They're on both sides. They're watching clearances. They're watching everything, all the connections and stuff like that. So you may spot a couple of spotters on different parts of the building and structure, and you'll, of course, see tons of people walking along with the rocket as it moves. Max says he feels like the boy who cried movement right now. I'm looking. I'm like pixel counting. How many pixels are there?
With the squint. It's like when you lower the radio when it's raining while you're driving. Does it do anything? Not really, but it feels like it is.
Folks, weigh in chat. Do y'all think that it has moved any significant amount since we last said that it moved? It's very similar to what we do at Starbase, where it's like, oh, they're supposed to lift it. Has it moved yet? Is there a tiny gap between the transporter and the bottom of the rocket? Like, I don't know. Wait, scroll back. Go forwards. Chat.
At least from our perspective, it's moved maybe like 3 feet a couple of times, but it's been like a foot at a time, it seems like. But it has moved since we first got here.
It has technically moved. Chat thinking there hasn't been a ton. of movement.
Technically, right is the
recently.
best kind of right.
Okay. The general consensus in chat is that it hasn't moved significant. Maybe it's moved just a little bit. A/B testing says minimal. The flashing light, you do see the flashing light. That's probably just a hertz thing, like a power frequency thing. The frame rate of the camera is the frame rate we're streaming at versus the frame rate of the flicker of the light that occurs naturally due to the fact that it's AC power is most likely what that is. I'm not aware of a special light that blinks intentionally like that. So,
I mean, they
uh-oh.
do have pad status lights in some places, but
Yeah, they do. I don't know that blinking one is one of the pad status lights.
hard to
I'm
tell.
gonna start calling Kevin Chicken Little Reed here because Kevin is yelling that it's moving now. Maybe not. It still seems to not be moving.
Still there.
I hope Kevin's not mad that I called him Chicken Little Reed.
Someone's saying the building moved? Well, no, that's a different launch pad. And
That is a different launch pad.
That was pad 37. They actually, for all the Delta launches, moved the building away. Well, I say building. It was the mobile service tower, but yeah.
Yep. We don't expect to see that building move. At least not move out from under a rocket, or out from over a rocket would be the right way to say it, because Delta 4 is done with its launches.
Yep.
I keep trying to A/B test. You have to find a spot in the video where it's the same camera at the same angle. I think I see the tripod expanding slightly from the heat of the sun in the A/B test, but I don't think I see the rocket actually moving yet. You really don't understand how much the materials that you mount cameras to expands and contracts until you time-lapse stuff over like multiple days. We had a time-lapse of the Mega Bay going up out at Starbase, and one of the cameras that was doing the time-lapse was mounted to a wooden deck railing. And as the sun would sort of rise and move across the sky and set, the camera literally looked like it was waggling all over, but it was just the expansion and contraction of the wood that it was mounted to. And so we couldn't get a very good time lapse from that camera because it moved so much through the heat expansion and contraction. And we had another one that was mounted to a solid steel structural point of a shipping container, and that one didn't move noticeably. It just moved a little bit, but it didn't move nearly as much as the wooden deck did. That was a very PTZ sort of style zoom in.
I was gonna say that's a fancy zoom. Yeah.
Are we enhancing the feed there? I think Kevin can explain in the background. That looks like a zoom in of the feed. That was almost too smooth to be a zoom in of the camera. That was like an enhance.
It was an enhance per Kevin.
That's a neat trick. Yeah, Richard Garnish says it's moved twice now, a little at a time, but it's been static for the last 3 or 4 minutes. It's like trying to get a lazy teenager out of bed in the morning. It's like, you're going to be late for class. You need to get up and go. It's plate tectonics. The movement you see is from plate tectonics.
Oh,
There's
God.
that fancy. Wow. That is cool.
Smooth.
I think it's pointy enough. Dude, that's me every morning. I mean, I'm not a teenager and I still have trouble getting going. In fact, I'm talking too much and not drinking enough coffee right now. Sawyer, I need you to talk some so I can revisit my coffee over here.
Sure, throw me a question or something. Happy to talk while you recaffeinate. While you
well,
go for caffeine prop load.
To throw you a CPU Genius is actually what the name is, not C-Pug Genius. I've never met a lazy teenager that sleeps vertically, but anything is possible.
Oh my gosh.
It's a good distinction.
That's a good one.
To toss you a question, Sawyer, I need to find a question from chat. Looking for ULA related questions here.
All right, I'll throw one in the meantime then, so you can
Yeah, if you got
catch a
one.
drink. How about we talk about the rocket orientation / type for this particular mission?
Sure.
Because you mentioned at one point the VC-2S for this one, and it's very different from like the Atlas 551, where it's a 5-meter fairing, 5 solids, and 1 Centaur. These are a little bit different. So, in terms of the naming style for this one, you have the V for Vulcan, the C for Centaur. I know, clever here. Then the number is the number of solids, so in this case 2. And then the last letter is the payload fairing length. And yes, that is a letter instead of a number for length. So there is the 5.4 meter diameter, 51 foot standard, which is the S, which is what you see on the screen there. And then there is the 5.4 meter, 70 foot long one, which would be denoted with an L. So again, this one, VC-2S. Once they fly Dream Chaser, that will fly on a VC-4L. So that'll have 4 solids and the longer fairing.
My feedback to ULA on that is that it's more difficult to say than 551, 401, right? Like all the Atlases were designated with the 3 letters, and then you had the special ones that launched the double Centaurs and stuff like that, right? But VCL2F, that's a little tougher to say than 551.
Yeah, VC-2S is this one.
VC2S, thank you.
Yeah, and I know someone's like, oh, small or large? Per ULA, they just went with S meaning standard, and
Not
L
small.
meaning long. Not small, standard.
Well, you wouldn't want to insinuate that this was a small rocket or a small payload capacity, so you go with standard instead of, something, I guarantee you there was like a meeting where somebody sat down and said that.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like, yeah, no, we can't call it small. Or short or anything like that.
Right.
I'm not small, I'm standard, says Dougal.
I may have just Googled the Vulcan user guide.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And found that on ULA's website.
Right.
Like the fact that there was a meeting and somebody said we don't want to call it small or short, we want it to be standard.
Sure.
Oh, I thought this is I have that open as well. But
We're just show the user's guide here on screen, y'all. Are we supposed to read this? What are we supposed to do?
Although it is kind of funny, by the way, if you go into the downloads page on ULA's website, you can download the Vulcan 501 and 561. So even them with their numbers are like, wait a minute.
Maybe they changed the designation when they're getting close to release here after it's certified.
Yeah, I guess this showing a lot of the technology that was used from Atlas and Delta now making its way into Vulcan with the GEMs, the solid rocket motors. These are just XL. So you got GEM 63 XLs. You've got Centaur, although this is Centaur 5. And some other things that are a little tricky to read in Discord previews.
The good news is that it says approved for public release on the bottom. This isn't like some super secret document we're leaking or anything like that. Yeah, there you go. Approved for public release. You can actually just download this from the United Launch Alliance website. It is no big secret because this is a public document. If you're interested in reading up more, or potentially you have a payload that you need a rocket for, you could go through the user's guide here. Oh, sounds like we're getting reports of more horns from the field.
And visible movement. This is absolutely moving, 100%.
Oh, it is. You can really... Oh, we're going to enhance even more. Jeez, look at this.
That's enhanced 2 in chat.
You can definitely see the rocket moving out of the... Like, look at it against the background. I guess the background or that white line at the top versus the curve of the tip of the not so pointy payload fairing.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious.
There, it's moving again. I guess the most obvious thing to me, you see the sort of the railings to the right of the PLF. Then you see that vertical light colored box behind it. You can really sort of see the motion across that. Some people might be here like, oh, why are we bothering showing this? This is going to be an entirely different animal when it gets close to the cameras. It's like, wow, geez, we're sitting here waiting for this thing to move. It's going to go right next to the cameras. It's actually really difficult to fit the rocket in frame, even looking straight up, because when it rolls out, it's going to go right next to us. So this is sort of the pre-show, the prequel here.
Yeah, and it's quite the tall rocket too. I mean, we're talking the booster itself is 33 and a third meters, or 110 feet, basically. The whole thing is about 200 feet.
I don't think it becomes a giraffe.
Oh, I don't know. We would need the DOS art on it to see if it becomes a giraffe.
And at some point, we should see the rocket separate from the vehicle. We don't see it right now, but it does seem to be getting brighter, right, Sawyer?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, as it goes out of the shade of the building as well. Man, that Viv throwing shade.
Oh my gosh.
Hey, at least I didn't say Sigma like
Too
like who
early,
was Nick
Sawyer.
Hague.
It's too early. It's like way too early right now.
Just see it peeking over the bush there. It's coming.
I really do want to trim those trees.
You and me both.
Look, you can't even see the railing I was pointing out before, and then the sort of white boxes you can't even see anymore. Look at the interesting pattern on the payload fairing there.
I was just noticing that.
There's like, yeah, go ahead.
No, what were you going to say?
It's like two differently painted panels, two squares or rectangles there, and then a little squiggly line. It almost looks like they've put some sort of sensor or something along that and put a little squiggly line of sealant or something. I really wonder what that is.
Yeah, especially because it's below the umbilicals.
Interesting. I wouldn't expect it to be like sometimes you see a different patch like that and it's an antenna or something, right? I wouldn't expect it to be that. I really wonder what that is.
I don't know. That's good
Bet you
point.
it's nowhere near the payload, the inert payload simulator.
Well, given the size of the inert payload based off of the drawing
Graphic?
that they've given, or the graphic, that's the word, yeah.
Nice. I guess we haven't had that discussion yet. It always comes up like, oh, payload simulator, mass simulator. It's not a mass simulator, it is a mass. Useful mass simulator. It's like, do you have a dog in that fight, Sawyer?
I mean, I like that useful mass simulator. That's an interesting way to describe it.
It's simulating useful mass.
Yeah.
Or it's usefully simulating mass or something like that, I guess, huh?
Either or, but I mean, it's serving a purpose, so I get why people just want to call it mass, but I don't know. I think useful mass is the best way to put it then.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Here's a question. Hazelnut. We do get a lot of people watching the streams that are English as a foreign language, like don't speak English as their first language, foreign speakers. So can we please pronounce Falcon and Vulcan? Falcon is like an F, Falcon, and Vulcan is like a Vulcan. The N sounds the same to me. Like I don't say Falcon and Vulcan, right? Like it's an CON and CAN. We don't say a Falcon 9 rocket, and a Vulcan rocket. To me, they're both Falcon and Vulcan. Like they both have can on the end, right, Sawyer?
Yeah, the ending sound is the same.
Yeah, one of those English things where it's two different ways to spell the ending sound there, but we pronounce it the same way. And then the front of it, like Falcan, or the Fal and the Vol, those are two different things, like FAL and VOL.
VUL.
Does anybody say, what did I say?
VOL.
VOL? Vulcan. Vulcan. Yeah, either way. I was trying to do it phonetically. Does anybody say fall? Falcon?
I see Falcon's Maze says it that way.
I know. I think that's like Falcon's Maze name, but I don't call it a Falcon 9. Do you?
I've heard it, but by very few people.
Almost sounds like more of a northern accent than a southern accent. Chris, yeah, the British accent. Chris says Falcon. Falcon. Never says Falcon. Falcon, not Falcon. I guess that's us southern speakers.
Say it enough times and it stops sounding like a real word. I think that's where we're at.
It does. It's like, what a weird word to say. We've seen the rocket is significantly moved out. It's actually got light on the side of it, sunlight, direct sunlight on the left-hand side of the rocket there. And if we look at it in the long shot, you can see it is significantly away from the building. But here's where we expect a pause, like another longer pause, or maybe not a longer pause. They've got to do some preps. They need to make sure that everything's ready to roll, everything's secured and cleared and that sort of stuff. I think Max said they were going to change tracks. And after they get it sort of switched over, go ahead, Sawyer.
Nope, you had it.
Yep. After they get it on the long haul track here, it is literally going to haul by them. It's going to pick up speed. And this is really interesting because there's a slight raise in the tracks. The tracks have to go uphill slightly. So we have seen in the past, we have observed aborted rollouts where they didn't get enough momentum or maintain enough momentum, and they had to stop and roll it back towards the VIF and then get a running start again to get up the hill with the equipment that's there. And part of the reason for that is because the equipment that they're using, sort of the train tracks and transporters, they have been transporting rockets along this path for a very long time. And they weren't specifically designed for these rockets. They weren't like overbuilt to handle the mass of these rockets, right? So once they started putting larger rockets, SRBs, et cetera, rolling up the hill, they sort of have this rollout procedure where they have to literally get a running start to make it up the bump in the hill. So when it starts moving, it moves. It can't like, oh, well, let's stop again, then start again, then stop again, then start again. They have to maintain that momentum up that slight, I say hill. If you're looking at it, you can't even really see it with your eye, but it's enough that physics recognizes that it's there. So when it starts to go, it should go. If it doesn't, it may have to roll back and get another running start.
Yep, and in case you're wondering, by the way, of how far back this goes, the first launch from this launch pad was December of 1965. This originally flew the Titan, specifically Titan 3C, Titan 3E, Titan 4, before it then switched over to Atlas V, and now adding Vulcan to it.
There you go. In fact, there's some of the roads out there still bear those names of the original rockets. You get to the Titan Causeway and that sort of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
As you're driving around the Cape. You see those road signs, right, Sawyer?
Oh, absolutely. You see all of them for, especially a lot of Titan roads and things like that.
Yep. Hang on, I need to remember to zoom fleet cam in now that the time lapse is done. I set it up so that we could get a time lapse of the Jacqueline Blue Origin landing barge turning around in the turning basin there at the port. And it looks like it's made it all the way up against the dock now, so I need to zoom the camera in. Oh, the joys of having so many cameras around the Cape.
Well, hey, the port's pretty important too. Again, that's how a lot of this rocket got here. I think, Kevin, I know I sent some pictures earlier because there is Jacqueline, by the way, the drone ship for Blue Origin. But just down the water a little bit from there, right near the entrance to the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station there, is where ULA's rocket ship docks. And that is where they then unload parts of the rocket. And I was actually there in June when they had the core stage for this Vulcan rocket unloaded off of the boat and then basically driven down and rolled out to Slick 41.
Sounds like more horns are sounding. Reports from D out in the field. Sawyer, I'm surprised you didn't use some emphasis there when you said that the port is actually important.
Oh.
It was right there.
I missed out.
It was just right there.
That was good. I was
okay,
trying
I
to stall
gotcha.
to see if Kevin could pull up the pictures that I took, but
It's quite important.
I like that.
Anyways.
I'm so mad. There we go. Yeah, this was after it was unloaded from the port, making its way in. It is a big rocket, and you can really get to see the difference in the material there on the red part versus the silver part, the foam versus the not foam.
Yep. And this is from when it actually came out of rocket ship, right? Well, this is a public area you were able to view this from?
Yes, this was from just in front of the Air Force/Space Force Museum that they have there.
And look at this. On the real-time view on the right-hand side, the rocket has started to haul the mail. Look at it moving now. Beginning to pick up some substantial speed here. So if we're clear now, this is the part where we should see it sort of maintain this speed all the way past the area. Kevin, do we have audio? Like when it gets closer, are we able to pipe that audio in so they can hear the sound of the transporters go by? Or are we not set for audio today? I think we are set for audio. Kevin said yes in the back channel.
Yeah, it's very loud in case you're wondering. You have all the generators and things as it rolls down the track, and worth noting that there is actually ear protection that's given out to the people there.
Yep.
As it gets that loud, that close.
So as it gets closer, we'll actually hop over that way and we'll let y'all listen in to the hum of the transporters, massive diesel electric generators, just like a train, like a freight train uses. They use diesel fuel to generate electricity, and then they drive these massive electric motors just like a train does, because that gives you a lot of torque and it gives you a lot of instantaneous control over that torque. That's why trains, like massive freight trains, use those sorts of motors. Same sort of technology being used here to transport the rocket out. But we will listen in when we get a little bit closer here.
Oh, yeah.
It is loud. I mean, it's required hearing protection. Like ULA actually hands it out. They provide it to people that they let be nearby. And then they remind you like, hey, put it in. They're like looking out for everybody. And if it starts to get close and I'm going to take it out real quick. You take it out and you're like, whoa, yeah, let's not do that. That's a really bad idea. So.
Yeah, there's a little hill that you can also, that they sometimes allow media to watch from that's a little further away. Even that far away, which is, about a quarter mile maybe from next to the beach house there?
Yep.
That it's still very loud.
You can hear it going. So.
Oh.
There you go. I think we're going to start piping in some audio. But you can see all of the folks here spotting, looking around, making sure that everything's good. A lot of eyes on the rocket. Of course, a lot of sensors and stuff as well, making sure that it's level. The speed, all that sort of stuff that they watch as it goes out. I guess the speed, the power being generated. You can see coming into frame at the bottom, like peeking out from behind the trees, the massive power packs. Those are the big generators and support equipment that they roll out with the rocket.
So they're actually, these boosters look small. They are not small. Those are 21 meters in length. They're 72 feet.
You can have up to 6 of them on the Vulcan. This one has 2 of them. You can see one here, then one's going to be on the opposite side. But there is Vulcan rolling out to the pad for CERT-2, which is coming up this Friday. This is going to be the part where it's a little bit difficult to fit the rocket completely in frame.
It is quite a large rocket, and they are very close. So yes, it's going to be a little bit of neck and tripod craning.
Neck and tripod craning, nice. Let us know in chat if you're having trouble hearing us. It's going to get louder and louder, but we can sort of mitigate the volume here electronically. All right, 5x5. This is the interesting part where the rocket and equipment may actually block part of our signal. Massive pieces of metal getting between us and our cell phone towers.
This never gets old.
You really are just right there next to it. You can see some of the high pressure tanks that are transported along with the rocket there on the side of the platform itself.
When you really get a good view of that crayon foam kind of too, you can see where the cutoff is.
Yep. Those are helium tanks, you can see. 3,000 pound helium tanks down on the bottom. You usually know they're high pressure when they're small like that, like small circumference tanks, small diameter tanks, higher pressure, lower volume. And there's a nitrogen tank, only 1650 on the nitrogen there.
Oh, man.
You can see the train car. It literally looks like a train car.
It is legitimately on train track.
It is, yeah.
I've had to ride over them many times. They are train tracks for sure.
They are train tracks. Look at this.
Oh my gosh. What a view.
You know something, ULA doesn't have to do this. They don't have to support us coming out here and sharing these views with you. So massive thanks to United Launch Alliance and their comms team for allowing us to come out here this morning. And not only be out here, but also provide y'all with these live views of Vulcan rolling right past where our photographers Max and D are standing. Yeah, thanks, Tori. Thanks, ULA. It really is true. Like this is not something they have to do. And they take the time, they roll us out there, they let us get set up, they let us transmit, right? We use cellular technologies for this. So it's a known thing. We're not using any esoteric, wacky high frequencies or anything like that that would interfere with the rocket. But we use basically cellular modems to send this signal back to you. And they support all that. They didn't have to do that. Tweeting clips like a madman. Nice, Chris.
By the way, I see some people, I saw Westy putting the emote in chat of Tori.
Yeah. It's a little over halfway to the pad now. Does this say lift off? Is that... That's like their support bus following it. And then all the ULA vehicles.
It says 321 liftoff, by the way.
321 liftoff. Nice, thanks. The convoy of ULA vehicles following the rocket out to the... Look at the wind, Sawyer. That windsock is like totally just hanging down.
Nothing, yeah.
It's got to be toasty out there.
Yeah, you see the umbrella going up.
The umbrella. It's not Sophie. It's not spray-on foam insulation. It's something about, I don't know, umbrella insulation. Thermal radiation. I don't know. Chat, help me out. What's an umbrella? Give me an acronym for an umbrella, please.
Oh, gosh. I'm scared.
I put chat to work. So it's actually going to get over there and enter the gate. There's a fence that goes around the outside of pad 41. and it's going to get up there. Yeah, there you go. Can't quite see the fence here, but it'll get in between the lightning towers, those 4 towers, not the Tetris-shaped one in the middle. It's a really weird Tetris piece, by the way, but not the weird one, the shorter one in the middle, but the 4 on the outside. You can actually see in this a little bit tough because we're zooming in quite a bit, but you can see the lightning catenaries, the cables that go between those towers for lightning protection purposes.
Yes, that's what the 4 towers are for.
It is what the 4 towers are for. Hey.
Yeah, it really is interesting. Again, the fact that those towers don't really do much other than hold the cables that actually do the job.
In fact, the white parts are insulators, aren't they?
I believe so.
I'm pretty sure the white parts are actually insulators because they don't want the lightning to travel down. You can see the fence in this shot, by the way. There's the fence. You don't want the lightning to travel down the tower. You want it to travel through the huge cables in a controlled manner.
And then you can also see in the back there the part that's used for crew access for Atlas and Starliner.
Yep.
By the way, I do want to point out, we still have 4 Towers merch, too.
Do we really?
We really do.
No, we still had 4 Towers merch.
Oh, we do.
It's an older meme, but it checks out.
And it's got a great pun on it, so I love it.
Oh no, is that the one with the lightning?
Uh-huh.
Oh jeez.
Where it says they're talking about us again, and the towers say, shocking.
Shocking.
Shirt and mug available.
It's an infrared deflection apparatus. IDA hat on a stick, shadow maker, deployable H2O diverter. All right.
And yes, Crispy, you are exactly right. My favorite shirt is indeed a pun shirt, so I love it.
The question is, do you have to use a pun token to put on the shirt?
Worth it. Absolutely worth it.
Worth it. Does anybody notice that the lightning on the shirt is actually in the shape of Florida?
Uh-huh.
Very clever.
We
get up early. We don't go to sleep until we've, well, I don't know what that is. Been very clever, at least thought that we've been very clever. We tell ourselves we're very clever. That's maybe the right way to say it.
We never really talk about that merch. I love that shirt and the mug on that, so I just had to bring it up. I'm sorry.
It is all in the details. So
Again,
well inside the... Go ahead, Sawyer. Well inside
I was
the
going to say,
gate.
you're talking about that speed that it needs to pick up, just to give you an idea of how much there. I mean, we're still talking only like a couple miles an hour at most, but...
Oh, yeah.
It's needed, and it zooms.
It doesn't have to go fast. It needs momentum, right? So the weight of the combined apparatus, the transporters, the mobile tower, the rocket itself, the SRBs are filled, remember. The rocket isn't filled with its propellants, but the SRBs are filled with propellants. And the mass of all those things together, you get it going. You just have to get it going a little bit. It doesn't need to go 20 miles an hour because you also need to, stop it on the other end. But you just need to get that momentum going. I would be very interested to see if we couldn't get the combined mass of the entire apparatus from ULA and then the speed that it moves and figure out the momentum, like the kinetic energy that's involved. I wonder if Dr. Holly is watching right now. Because if Dr. Holly is watching, that would be a good AP physics question. What is the mass of the whole thing? How fast is it moving? And how much energy or how much momentum does that entire moving stack contain?
A lot.
A lot.
I think that's the official numbers, a lot.
Nice. It truly
I
is a
must say
train.
with this, though, it is a little different because, we're used to seeing the crawler transporter compared to this, which crawler transporter, instead of using tracks, reminder uses basically tank tracks.
Tank treads, yeah.
And they have to, they have to water the rocks as they go over them, DOS?
Well, they have to water the rocks or they have to water the people that are standing too close to the rocks.
This is not from personal experience or anything, right?
No, Kevin told me.
Uh,
We
for
were.
the- Yeah, you
Go
want to tell
ahead.
the story?
I mean, I guess I was there. I could tell the story.
Yeah.
On the crawler transporter, like the massive moving platform that NASA uses, they use to move the Saturn V rockets out. They use to move the shuttles out. They use to move SLS out to the pad. It's got the big 4 tank treads on the massive moving platform for the CTs, the crawler transporters, right? And those have all these systems and suspension and stuff like that to maintain the suspension for the rocket or the equipment as they move it down the track, right? There's no track there. Part of the suspension for the rocket or for the entire platform is the rocks that it rolls on. And as it rolls on these rocks, it actually crushes them. It breaks the rocks apart. Well, the rocks actually contain silicates, and if you crush the rocks in the way that they get crushed, it can release a very fine powder into the air, and you don't want to breathe that. So for health and safety purposes, when they move the massive crawler transporter, they have a water truck driving in front of it, and they spray down the rocks. And it's not to keep the rocks cool or anything like that. The purpose of the spray is to keep down the dust, because you don't want the people that are there working on the rollout, to inhale the dust from the crushed rocks, right? So they spray this water truck, and they spray it down so that this dust doesn't get into the air. And if you happen to be there filming the crawler transporter, and you set your camera too close to the side of the rocks, and the water truck drives by, it can hose you down pretty good. Kevin and I were standing there recording. We actually did some interviews. We were talking with the NASA folks about how that transporter works as part of a big long-term video we're working on. And we got absolutely hosed down by the crawler transporter water truck. Of course, here with the ULA transporter and the fact that it's on rails and not on rocks that are being crushed by tank treads, we don't have that dust issue because the rails are nice and controlled, so no need for a water truck, so no chance of getting hosed down. It's a little bit refreshing, actually.
I'm sure for the first 2 seconds till it continued drenching.
It was a lot of water, let's put it that way. 9/8 Central, that was us. That was Kevin and myself that got hosed down by the truck.
Yeah. Well, I think I've made fun of you enough. I'm going to swap out here commentary as we get to the final part of the roll.
Alrighty. Thank you, Sawyer, for joining us. We appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Have a good rest of the day, and glad you were able to join us here today.
Same, and hopefully I will see everyone for the launch Friday, no earlier than 6 a.m. Eastern.
Good deal. Folks, that's Sawyer. Sawyer Rosenstein. You see his handle up there at the NASA Man over on the Everything app. Thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure.
I think we've got somebody hopping in here to hang out with me. We're getting close to the end of the roll, but Alex, did you get permission to speak?
I think it's pending regulatory approval, but yeah, I'm here.
You won't see ULA say pending regulatory approval because they turn in their paperwork on time. Oof. I'm gonna start a holy war in
Too
chat.
soon.
Too soon. Well, it wouldn't have been so soon if you turned in the paperwork on time. Anyways, how you doing today, Alex?
I'm doing fantastic. I was actually watching the live stream. Like I was, following along and commentating in the back channels, and so it was like, yeah, I can hop in, tag here and for Sawyer, and it's I don't make as many puns as him, but I can try my best.
We'll see what we get. There's potentially some more opportunities for puns coming up. Y'all, you've heard Alex's voice before, one of our subject matter folks here to answer more questions and hang out for us. How you doing today, Alex?
I'm doing great. I'm actually working on some future scripts and some future articles. There might be a certain article about a certain company that has had 3 groundings in the last quarter. So, yeah.
I've been on the stream. Is it like an official thing now?
Which one?
Sorry, has there been an announcement that I haven't seen come out about the anomaly that SpaceX declared on their last launch?
Oh, well, technically, okay, so technically we don't have a confirmation. And it's
Okay.
also not supposed to be grounding, right? Like we had that whole discussion with the FAA as well, that it's
I
not
don't-
supposed to be grounding. It's like pause in launches or whatever.
I don't have a better word for it. Whoa! Hang on, sorry.
Wow,
the FAA
look
is
at that.
interesting,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
this
yeah.
is more interesting.
No, yeah. Look at those B4s and the Gem 63 XL, right?
Gem 63 XLs, yeah. The lighter colored bell you see, the nozzle you see, is the SRB, and then behind it you can actually see some of the cooling channels or the little hoses that go around it, right? If this, we can still see the BE4 with the person there with the hard hat taking the pictures.
They have
you can
booties.
yeah. It's sort of like hanging down. You can see that it has a booty because it's hanging down.
Mm-hmm.
A little sag in the boot there.
Is that more horns?
What are the horns for? They
I'm
just sound
guessing
like
it's
car
trying-
horns.
That too. I'm guessing it's trying to warn the folks.
They're trying to alert everybody that there's a cool shot underneath the transporter if you zoom in a little bit. It's the same horns as before. It's probably the ULA van honking at the traffic in front of it.
Get off, get off.
Get out of the way. I don't know where the
bet if
van
the
would be
rocket-
going. There's nothing. They can't really get anywhere.
I bet if the rocket were able to talk, it would say, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do this Friday. I'm trying to get off as well.
In chat, Shmuel saying those aren't Raptors, they're booties. BE4 beauties. Beauties? I don't know if I can make that one work.
That's probably a stretch, right?
Yeah, that's a bit of a stretch, honestly. You know what's a stretch? Making the booty fit on the bottom of the engine bell. I tried.
Oh man.
That was.
I bet
that
it
was a bit
feels
much.
like I'm having flashbacks now, trying to do the same with my bed, having to put the bed covers, everything.
Chat, it's okay if you boo me. Like, I'm fine with it. I've been on the internet for a long time. If y'all groan or say boo or whatever, I'm okay with it. Oh, so talk to us. The flight's coming up on Friday, right? I saw a couple people asking when this is
Yeah.
launching.
Yeah, well, this mission, unfortunately, they don't have a payload ready for it. Because Dream Chaser was going to be the payload for this mission, but
Yep.
Dream Chaser is taking a little bit longer than previously expected, and so it's going to be delayed. So instead, they need to launch this mission. So the whole deal with this mission and why it's called Certification Flight 2, or CERT-2 for short, is because this is part of the process for ULA to certify Vulcan for military missions with the government, right? And so once they are able to certify the rocket, then they're going to be able to launch those missions. And while I said before that there are no payloads for this flight,
Yep.
for this flight, but there are military payloads that are wanting to launch already, like they are ready to go, and they are waiting for Vulcan to be certified. And essentially, as soon as it gets certified, there are like 3 military missions back to back to back that are supposed to launch like November, December, and January. It's like 3 in a row on Vulcan, and so it's gonna be interesting.
Gotcha.
So
Again, that's
today,
part of the whole
sorry.
cert thing, like certifying that this thing is
Exactly.
ready to fly those future payloads.
so they have some kind of payload simulator, mass simulator, whatever you want to call it.
Oh, but it's real
more-
mass. It's real
Yeah,
mass,
so-
Alex. It's not simulating mass.
That's why I call it a payload simulator, because I think it's more fit to the purpose, because it's simulating that there's a payload
Simulating
there.
a payload.
not
But it is
the
a
mass.
payload. It is actually a payload. It's not simulating
Like
a payload.
like a
it is
circular reference.
a circular reference. This is interesting. In Robert Garrett, I will read this. I don't know that it's qualified, but Robert Garrett says the transporter is classed as a rail vehicle, so they're required to use the same horn signals as any American rail vehicle. That seems like it would make sense to me. I mean, it's like a private railway, but it could still be classified in that way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I say it's not like verified or whatever because I don't know that that's true. It's somebody in chat. I don't know who the person is, but it seems like it makes sense. Like potentially they work for United Launch Alliance or they work for other places that do things like this. So it makes good sense, but just being clear, I haven't independently verified that as a fact. It makes sense.
That's next time that we talk to ULA for whatever, we need to ask them.
We should, yeah.
What about the transporter?
Yeah. So it looks like the rockets made it all the way over to the pad area. Still going to be some work to set it down on the big pillars, but Max and D are going to need to pack up their gear. I think everybody wants to get out of the hot sun, and there won't be much to see from that angle for the immediate future. So massive thanks to Max, Evans, and D Wise for rolling out early this morning, taking all the equipment out there, setting up the packs, getting us those live feeds, 2 different feeds as well, so we could have like a wide shot and then a zoomed in shot and that sort of stuff. But there is D's information, a fantastic videographer who does outstanding work. You might have recognized some of D's slow-mo on some of the launch streams. And then there's Max Evans, always out there taking those fantastic stills that you'll see from the launches. So big thanks. Put it into chat for Max and D rolling out and getting us these shots this morning.
Indeed.
Incredible footage. I agree, Rowan Redbrush. Incredible footage. And hey, thank you one more time to United Launch Alliance for supporting this. They rolled out a special crew, the comms team, to get our folks there to the pad, give them an area where it was safe to set up, right next to the rocket, and be there with them answering some questions and giving them some status updates while this occurred. Rocket companies don't have to do stuff like this. Like, they don't have to give anybody any access to the pad, right? And to come out this morning and support us sharing this rollout and these cool close-up views with you, it really is cool that they're able to do that for us. So big thanks to ULA for making that happen. We got some photos now, huh?
I bet they probably needed some kind of wide lens for that one, because
it's okay to shoot this vertically, right?
Exactly, yeah. That one has to be vertically, because otherwise it cannot fit.
Yep. We've got a couple of these. We actually downloaded some additional stills that we can show y'all since the rockets made it all the way over to the pad. Maybe we have a couple more of those. We'll see if we do.
And I bet Chris will be uploading some of the pictures to members.
Yep.
At some point later today or tomorrow.
I bet you a lot of these will become member content where you can see the full resolution things, zoom into them. We'll put them on our Discord. We'll probably put them on the YouTube member program. We'll put them up in the L2. There's a folder. Chris needs a folder so he can upload these.
Can we go back to that picture? Because I saw Max at
Was
the bottom
Max in the last picture?
Yeah. He was like trying to hide from the view.
That hat, I will say that hat isn't blocking a lot of sun in that shot. For the surface area of the hat, I think the inclination of the deflection surface is also critical to the successful operation of the infrared deflection device. Nice. Needs a bigger rim. It's just a morning thing. The sun's coming up, and then you get the morning sun coming in at an angle. Yes. So, what else? There's always more questions than we can answer. I saw all sorts of questions come through chat. We tried to talk through as many of them as we could. Alex, has there been anything here that we really should share? Anything else we want to talk about CERT-2 coming? Of course, we're going to be streaming it on Friday for that 3-hour window.
It's also, so, right now, SpaceX decided to stop the launches of Falcon 9 until they resolve that upper stage issue that they had during that deorbit burn
yes.
the other day. But, they still have to plan, in the meantime, they have to plan as they go along with that procedure of coming back to flight. And right now, there's a planned launch of a Starlink mission out of the Cape on the same day. And the windows for those 2 launches overlap. So it's going to be interesting if they actually do, go ahead and resume launches and they're able to do that. That's going to be amazing to see, 2 launches back to back from 2 different, 2 different rockets, 2 different companies. and adjacent launch pads, because it will be from Slick 40, and so we will have, potentially, again, pending resuming flights and whatnot, they could, in theory, do something like that. So that's interesting.
So on Friday, what Alex was saying, we've got 2 windows possible. There's, of course, the Vulcan CERT-2 flight, but then a Starlink also in there, and that's going to be dictated as to whether or not SpaceX can return to flight after that mishap. If you weren't aware, the mishap that occurred on the SpaceX launch, the launch went fine. It was Crew 9 going up to the station. Crew got to the station just fine. No problems with Dragon. No problems with docking with the International Space Station. No problems with the trajectory of the payload, the Dragon capsule going up to the ISS. Everything went great there. It was the deorbit of the second stage that had a problem. And SpaceX telling us that the second stage deorbited outside of the exclusion zone, which both is and isn't a big deal, right? Realistically, for this specific launch, being outside of the zone in the middle of the southern Pacific Ocean, not that big of a deal because it's not a particularly populated area, right? However, rockets coming down in places that are outside of their planned zones is a big deal. So this one, we lucked out. There wasn't a ship underneath it or fishing boats or anything like that because it was over such a remote area. But you still got to understand what went wrong. You got to know why that stage didn't hit the target area, because they clear out the target areas and they clear out a lot more room than they actually need, right? They clear out this massive swath of area, make sure there's no ships, boats, fishers, people like that, anything like that out there. So not a big deal. No injuries reported, no damage reported, but it did fall outside of the area. And Alex, that's one of the specific tests that causes an anomaly investigation to be initiated, isn't it?
Yeah, we still have not received any confirmation from the FAA. I believe we have asked, I think, but they have not replied back. So we'll keep an eye on whenever that happens.
Yep.
So we don't have a confirmation from the FAA that they have grounded, but SpaceX themselves have said, look, we're going to pause the launches until we figure out what happened. And if you think about it, like even just from a technical standpoint, that makes total sense because like forget about the safety. Like, even if they didn't care and said whatever it drops, it drops. But they targeted a certain burn and it did not do that, right? When you think about that, for example, the upcoming mission Hera for the European Space Agency or Europa Clipper for NASA, right? Those are interplanetary missions where you need to hit a very narrow target. Like your burn needs to be very precise. And whatever the cost was, whether hardware, software, or whatever, anything that happened with the second stage for that deorbit burn could, in theory, happen on those missions. And so they need to be able to make sure that something like this doesn't happen on any other mission. They also have a transporter mission late in October as well. So, it's any mission that essentially involves multiple burns of the MBAC engine could, in theory, be affected by something like this, right? And so we don't know, obviously, because we're not involved and we're not SpaceX engineers either. And so I think we can get something like that.
That's the big thing that a lot of people don't understand. What happened here is the second stage engine didn't do what they thought it was going to do. They didn't do what they commanded it to do, right? It didn't put the rocket in the right trajectory. And okay, it landed in the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, no big deal, right? But what happens when your second stage doesn't put Europa Clipper into the right trajectory?
Exactly.
That's a huge deal. And if there's anything going on with the second stage, has nothing to do with the FAA, has nothing to do with safety. It has to do with getting the flagship mission Europa Clipper onto its proper trajectory. So absolutely, positively, I don't care what you think about the FAA, SpaceX internally needs to know what the heck is going on with the second stage because they've got a big mission coming up. And that has to be put
totally right
in a very precise orbit, right?
Yeah.
Wait, what? Oh, sorry. That was about spam. We get a lot of spam into some of our email boxes, and I was trying to think for a second whether or not I was supposed to talk about that. But here's Europa Clipper coming up. Scheduled in 10 days. It's got a little bit of a window, right?
Yeah, I
Alex?
believe it goes up until early November. Initially, it was actually going to be just to October 21st, but SpaceX was able to find a little bit more performance out of Falcon Heavy, so they were able to extend that window all the way to early November. So that's great.
So we'll see what happens with that. Of course, we'll report. We'll give you some actual facts. We won't just repeat what anybody says. We'll try to get some actual statements and see what is going on with that. But we saw SpaceX themselves recognizing that this could have an impact, and they need to understand exactly what's going on with that second stage before they launch their upcoming missions. Of course, SpaceX knows what they're doing. They will get to the bottom of it because that's important to the mission overall. But we'll continue to cover that as it develops over the course of the week. I do think that's going to bring us up to the end of the show, though, doesn't it, Alex?
Yeah, Vulcan seems to be pretty much already at the pad, so rollout complete. Next up should be the wet dress rehearsal. We're probably going to see if we can cover that as well, obviously on SEL, Space Quest Live. But then we also have the launch on Friday, so hopefully we get to see all of that as well and get, ULA can get Vulcan certified and everything for military launches.
Sounds good. Folks, thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks for being here while we share this experience with you, wherever you're watching from, all over the world. Alex, pleasure having you on.
It's always a pleasure to be here as well. Thank you.
Excellent. Earlier we heard from Sawyer as well. Thanks to Sawyer for joining us. Kevin Michael Reed in the background making the stream happen. Max and D out in the field getting those cameras for the cool close-in views. And lastly, my name's John Galloway. You may know me as Das, here for NSF. I do appreciate y'all watching, and thanks for hanging out. We'll catch you nerds later, at least by Friday, when we watch for the launch of Vulcan CERT-2.
And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Rolling up. Roger, roger, planet.
Water towers, fly! Yes! Tango down to nominal.
Flight counter SPD off. Bring in SPD off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
Put that in the big bag,
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?